Welcome back to Fast Market on the TD Ameritrade Network. I'm Tom White, joined by my co-host Kevin Hinks. But let's bring in our next guest for our cash tag segment. And that's going to be Megan Brantley, the Vice President of Research at LikeFolio. Thanks for being here, Megan.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. So we've talked over the last month or so about different travel companies. But one of the sectors within that space that kind of gets overlooked a lot, we talk about Airbnb quite a bit, but is the hotel sector. They've done pretty well over the last, few months, outperformed the overall market, Megan. But when you look at this, you're seeing this transition of mask mandates getting pulled back, cities and countries getting reopened. Do you have positive data here on the hotels, headed into the summer travel season?
Yeah, so I think that unsurprisingly, we're picking up on a lot of pent-up travel demand. When we look at a lot of the different trends we track, we're really seeing traction across the board. We're seeing international travel mentions up over 70% year over year. We're seeing, mentions of people traveling for work up significantly year over year. We're, whenever we look at mentions of just TSA throughput data, we're seeing, that throughput data in March, I believe, is 72% higher year over year. So you have people who are traveling, who are getting back out there, just overall mentions of people who are talking about booking a hotel specifically. So maybe they don't mention the hotel that they're booking with, but they're saying, I just made a reservation with this hotel, or I'm on my way to my hotel. Those are up by about 56% year over year. And we're starting to see some normalization there. So I think that if you are a hotel chain or hotel owner, this is definitely what you want to see. You're excited that consumers are returning to, that normal way of life and getting back out there. I think that whenever we look at the specific names in this segment, though, there's a little bit of a difference in how these names are performing. So we look at names like Hilton and like IHG, the Intercontinental Hotel Group. We see those doing really well. We see demand growing really significantly on a year-over-year basis. You can see Hilton and IHG to the farthest right on this scatter chart, which is definitely where you want to be, because that's showing, this is the year-over-year change in those booking mentions. So in terms of resurgence, these two are definitely leading the pack. We've got Marriott kind of in the middle, and then you've got Hyatt, at least from a demand perspective. This is the smallest name that we're looking at, is represented on the size of that circle, but it's also trailing when it comes to, that growth and that resurgence. So all the names are, faring a little bit differently, but obviously there's momentum across the board as consumers, resume travel.
Megan, when you're looking at Marriott, that's what we're looking at today as part of this group. And they've got 8,000 properties, 1.48 million rooms in 139 countries. Are they the biggest sample size? I mean, their competitors are obviously Hyatt and Hilton and some of the names you have up here. But it's amazing, the portfolio that they own of all different price levels. They've got Ritz-Carlton, but they've got all the way down to, Courtyard and Residence Inn. They've got something for every price range. So are there different levels of interest at different price ranges? They seem to break it down into 5 different groups of their hotels, with the nicest all the way down to what they call their classic select. And so where are the people going? What groups? Are they going to the higher end hotels? Are they going medium, reasonable, or are they going everywhere based on affordability?
I think that, in our data, we're seeing, resurgence across the board. We see a lot of mentions of people who are talking about these more luxury resorts, like you mentioned. But then whenever you look at just sheer volume, I do think it's interesting. The name I looked at right before we got on here was IHG. They have similar in Marriott too. They have a wide range of these different types of hotels. And from a volume perspective, our mentions trend more toward your, what I would call essentials. So, your Courtyard, or in IHG's case, that Holiday Inn Express. That's what we tend to track more than the luxury brands. We're tracking all, but in terms of what consumers are most likely to talk about, that volume does trend more toward just the essential that, your average consumer is going to travel with and going to book with. I do think it's interesting whenever it comes to, if we were to break down an earnings score, obviously these companies are not reporting earnings this week. I don't think they're slated to report earnings until May, but if we were to look at this, Marriott is the only one on this chart that we have that has a neutral value. I think its earnings score comes in at about a 17. So that's definitely, leans positive, but it's more in the neutral scale, where whenever you look at Hilton and IHG, we have those in the 30s range, and then we actually have Hyatt with a negative earnings score. So interesting that you guys are keying in on our neutral play this week. But I think that, at least from a volume perspective, our data definitely lends more toward that, essential stay versus the luxury travel.
And I kind of wanted to hit on that because Kevin mentioned the different aspects that Marriott has within it. W is their hip brand, right? And that's actually fallen because IHG now has Kimpton and Hilton has all these curio collections. Are you seeing any trends there in your data that these newer brand boutique type hotels will get more traction or mentions from consumers as opposed to maybe the stodgy old Marriott or JW Marriott?
One thing that we are getting a lot of that, I guess, mentions of people talking about the Bonvoy Marriott, which I think is more on their higher end experience. But specifically within IHG, we are seeing a lot of traction within that Kimpton hotel, like you mentioned. So, there could be competition brewing there. I think that, we are seeing a lot of these luxury boutique experiences that consumers like across the board. I think that another thing that's interesting is, especially with business travel returning, this is one where we're seeing Hilton's specifically start to excel because they have a really nice honors program. Whenever we look at what's driving a lot of those purchases, a lot of people say, I really like the Hilton honors experience. I like to accumulate these points. I like that they elevate me to this elite status pretty quickly. So I think that that's definitely one driver. If you're looking at, what's driving Hilton versus, say, a Marriott, it's that kind of honors experience.
Yeah, and I think that'll start picking up as people get back to the office and business travel picks up.
Yeah.
I think that's the outlook for a lot of these companies moving forward, why they've basically outperformed the overall equity market as pent-up demand continues to surge. All right, Megan, great stuff as always. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. You too.
All right, that's Megan Brantley, Vice President of Research at LikeFolio.com.